Hi everyone. In today's video, we're going to go over how to get this really nice configuration in your single select and multi-select question types in your Gavel workflows to have the information stacked on new lines on top of each other in a single answer choice. So this is really helpful when you're doing something like here where you have a person's full name and then their address, for example, and you want to have that all be within a single question type or question block associated with a single variable. So here, this would look like in your output document like this, where you have the person's first name, their middle initial, and their last name, and then you have their address stacked on top of each other. Same for the multi-select here. You can make it to where this is the contact one's name and the contact two's name and address and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this. It's pretty simple, actually. You just need to know what the right wording is for each of these different pieces. So let's go into how this is actually configured on the back end. So the way that you would do this is you would have your question type, whichever one you wanted for single select or multi-select. So you would do the same thing in each one. So it's going to be where you have whatever written out, whatever you would like for the answer choices to be. And wherever you want there to be a break or a new line, you're going to use this configuration new line. So you do straight bracket, all caps, new line, and then a straight bracket to close it out. So in this case, I want there to be the person's first name, their middle initial, and their last name. I want there to be a new line and have this information come underneath here, but be part of the same choice. Then I have the address, and then I want there to be a new line. So I use straight bracket, new line, straight bracket. And then I have the city, the state, and the zip code. So that's all going to be part of this choice one, as you can see here, but it's going to be configured in this kind of stacked format instead. That way, whatever is chosen will come out like this in my output document. The same goes here for my multi-select question type, where I have the same configuration, exactly the same here. Now, this would also work if you're going to use the kind of call sign configuration here. So let's say, for example, if you wanted to have contact information here like this, where you have these separated out. So let's say you didn't have all of this information at once. You wanted to call the information about the person's full name and then their address, for example. You would be able to do that as well. So let's say, for example, we have somebody's full name, and then we're going to say, let's say, for example, contact full name, and then that's just a question type that's in text. And then let's say we have another one that would be their address. So we could either make it to where it's a text area question where they just put in their full address there. But if we wanted to have it separated out, let's say we had contact, let's say their street address, and then we do, their city and their state and their zip, etc. Let's just do, for example, their street address here, just to kind of show you this one piece. So let's just put street address. And then if you had the information actually shown on a new page, so we'll do this one kind of info with $ configuration. So on this one, we're going to have, let's say, a single select question that's going to be just say like contact details. Then in this one, I'm going to call this one contact details, and then I'm going to call it single select with it's called Mako. So let's use that one here. We're going to use this configuration where we have our $ and then an open curly bracket and a closed curly bracket. And in the middle, we're going to use the variable that we're looking for. In this case, we want to call to the contact full name variable, and then we want to have a new line. like this. So we have a straight bracket, new line, and then a straight bracket. And then at the end here, we want to have the street address, let's say. So I'm going to call this contact street address. And then let's just see how this goes. So let's go ahead and save this, and let's get rid of this one, and we're going to run it just to show you what this will look like. So in this case, I have this first page here, and then here we have the full name. Let's just go ahead and put in contact three's name like this. And then the street address is going to be contact 3, and then it will say like street, let's say for example, and that's going to be that's just all we want for right now, because we would have, let's say, the city, the state, and the zip code in separate questions. Right now we just want this, we could even just call this like 123 contact 3 street. Let's go ahead and say continue, and you can see here that we have, from using our $sign, and then we have the open curly bracket and the closed curly bracket configuration as shown here, that this has been put on different lines. So we have the full name of the person we just used this configuration to pull from for this variable. Then we have a new line, and then we have their street address here. So there's obviously multiple different ways that you can do this. So you don't have to do it this way in order to have this information stacked on top of each other in your output documents. You could just use your simple variables and just insert the variable that you want, stacked on top of each other from this kind of way that you have it here. So you would just have simple variable full name, simple variable the street address, and then so on and so on. But if you wanted to do it this way, where you ask these in separate questions, and then you just call to that information and have a new line and have it output like this at the end, then you can do that as well. So this is how you would do that. You would have it to where you can either know the information in advance like this and have those be the option choices, or you can have somebody input that information like this, and then have that information called to in this configuration. But in either case, if you want this information to then be put into the output document that's attached to this particular workflow, you're going to need to use this configuration here. And there's a distinction between what the single select one looks like and the multi-select one looks like. So let's break it down a little bit here. So here we're going to use something called Jinja to make sure that this goes into our Word documents correctly. So we're going to have our opening curly brackets on either side. We're going to have this turned into a raw string. We're going to put in our variable, so contact details single select. Then we're going to say period replace. And then we're telling it that we want you to replace new line with some rich text that's going to be from what was input here. So then we have, for our multi-select, our opening statement here. So for item in this variable for our multi-select question, so this is our variable here. Then we're going to say we want you to see this as a raw string, and then replace each item wherever it says new line with the rich text that's involved that we put in it. So that is how we're going to manually code this, actually, because this isn't part of the no-code Word add-in. So it's kind of a little bit of a special one that we're trying today. But it's really useful in those instances where you want this information stacked, either, like I said, from some information that is predetermined that you already know, or when you have someone input some information on a separate page, and then you have that then be an option for here on the single select. As I mentioned, there's multiple different ways you could do this. You can also have this information stacked, let's say, for example, using invisible logic. I already told you can do this with your simple variables inserted just stacked on top of each other if there's a particular page where that information is input, such as here. So just know this isn't the only way to do it, but this is one way that you can do this that can be pretty nice depending on what it is you'd like to output at the end. So I've just paused and done a little bit of updating here to show you that. So I've added here that if you want to use this Mako configuration with the dollar sign and the two curly brackets, this will still work on output and look like this. So I'm just going to quickly replace this one and update this template in Gavel just to add a little bold and underline here. So you'll see this change after we run the new test. So this was our original one where I didn't have this third option here. And then that second one you saw is the one that I had. I just wanted to update this little formatting here. But right now, what we'll see as we go through from beginning to end is that we have lots of different options here for different ways we can do this. So like we said on our first page, we have our predetermined choices that somebody can choose from. We have NEWLINE wherever we want there to be a break. And then we have that same style here in the multi-select question. And then we have on our second page, let's just choose a couple of these here. On our second page, we're testing out this Mako configuration where we have the contact details in a single select on the next page that's being called to by this kind of function here. And then we are going to put in our contact three's name and their street address. And as I mentioned, we would have, let's say, their city, state, and zip, etc. Then we're going to continue and we can see that we have this configuration here where we have the contact's full name, then a new line, and then their street address, and then we would have whatever else we wanted after that. And then we can choose from here, continue, review our answers, continue. And then when we check out our output here, we can see that I was able to replace the old document with this new one directly from within the Word add-in here by choosing the document to replace and then just saying update in Gavel. And then you can see how each of these came out with our configuration that I'll go back over when we go back to the Word add-in. So you can see we have our contact to use name, our selection from that first single select. We can see our two options that were chosen from our multi-select. And then we can see for our single select where we had the dollar sign and two curly brackets configuration that we have this stacked nicely on top of each other as well. So let's go over to see what this looks like again in the kind of Word side of things. So here to kind of map this over to each other, for this single select here, as I mentioned, we have this kind of two curly brackets, then an R, then our variable for that particular one, for that single select question, a period, then replace, then parentheses and quotes around new line, a comma, parentheses around this kind of backslash and then a, then this kind of straight one, and then we have rich text, and then we close it out. For the multi-select, we're going to have this statement where we have our opening curly bracket with a percentage sign, then for item in, and then our variable name, and then percentage and close it out. Two curly brackets here, an R for raw string, and then item dot replace, new line, and then rich text, and for. On the last one, because this is the single select as well with our dollar sign to curly bracket configuration here, then we're going to have the same thing that we had up here for our single select. The only thing that's going to be different is the variable to refer to the variable that had that particular configuration. So that is all. That's all you need to do in order to have this come out really nicely like this and be able to kind of pull from information that was input by someone in the workflow previously and still be able to benefit from this as well. As I mentioned, you can obviously do this in multiple different ways, but this is one way that's always good to add to your tool belt when you're trying out different things. So that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.